I knew I was going into somewhere that had been dangerous and still was active. And, buildings were blowing up, and you saw the Taliban driving around in some trucks, and that was real.
I'm Meenakshi Srivastava, your host for Inspiring Explorers, and I welcome you to the show Inspiring Explorers. Each week, I'll be interviewing some of the most successful personalities who will share with us their inspiring life journeys and some of the interesting travel experiences that are not limited to sightseeing. Guys, make sure you share this episode with your friends. Please do subscribe, follow, give a 5-star rating, and hopefully a review. And also don't forget to come say hi to me on Instagram at @MyBohoVoyage. For this episode, we have an amazing Irish lady who is an international humanitarian, educator, facilitator, speaker, writer, and director of Join Her Network and Unique New Adventures, Una Lappin. Una is a nutritionist, has served in many countries like Africa, Sri Lanka, South Sudan, and some of these countries were post-war zones when she worked there, like Afghanistan and Iraq. And while she worked in these countries, she had to face many obstacles like extreme weather transitions, health issues, hygiene problems, security issues, and more. But none of this made her give up, and she did her job with full determination and brought home some amazing experiences and heartwarming memories. And today, through her vast cultural experiences, she tries to educate to look at the world with a different perspective. Now, before I start this episode, let me inform you that we recorded this interview during the COVID-19 lockdown, and hence the recording was done remotely. We were both sitting in our houses and recorded it online. So please don't mind the background noises, and I hope you still enjoy it. So without any further ado, let me welcome our guest for today, the International Humanitarian and the director of Join Her Network and Unique New Adventures, the Irish lady and a mother, Una Lappin. Welcome to Inspiring Explorers, Una, and thank you so much for taking out some time for us and make this possible.
You're very welcome. I'm happy to be here.
So Una, for beginning, let me start with that you were a nutritionist and a humanitarian. So tell us about what made you choose to become a nutritionist and an international humanitarian.
Okay, I'm going to have to go back to when I was a young girl. When I was 10, in 1985, you may remember Feed the World, when there was money being raised for children who were dying in Ethiopia, especially. And I knew then I wanted to do something. I just left hospital and I wasn't able to be part of the run to raise money. But I always wanted to do something to help people help themselves. Okay, so it was very much equity and equality from a very, very young age. And then I jump forward to maybe I'm 16, 17, and I see a picture of 2 malnourished African children in my school book.
Okay.
And I saw it and I realized that's what I want to do. I've always loved food. I love to know what's in food. I love to cook. And I've always just had an interest, very much so. So when I saw that picture, I knew that's what I want to do. And that's what I did. So I got my A-levels, as they are in Ireland. I did my undergraduate degree. And I realized I wanted to learn a little bit more about nutrition. My degree was food technology, so very much the science of food. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper. So I did a master's in Scotland, in the UK, in international nutrition. Then I couldn't get a job in the field because I had no field experience. So I worked in England for a number of years. The passion hadn't gone. And then finally I got my break to go into Afghanistan. Afghanistan was my first posting as an international nutritionist. And it just, what you see in a book is not what you see in the field. So all my work, I was 26 then, it was 2002. So from the age of 10 or 16 years, I knew that's what I wanted to do. It just took me a little bit longer. The nutrition element in Afghanistan, and then when I moved to Africa, was the extreme side of it. Okay, so we all need food to live, we all need water to live. But this was the extreme with regards to not having enough food or not having the right food. So that was very much eye-opening because it's very different seeing it in television to actually seeing it in the flesh, so to speak, and the smells that come with that, and the different layers of poverty that comes with that, and the stress of the family and the stress of the mother and the father, You don't get that from a lecture in university. So going from being 10 and being very headstrong and determined Irish girl to actually setting out and achieving what I wanted to achieve, and that was to get into the field when I was 26.
Wonderful. So, when these organizations came to you finally, you wanted to complete your dream and they were with you, asking you to go to Afghanistan and Iran. Uh, was there any hesitation before going? Because usually people would say no because a war was going on. Giving nutrition is a different thing, but when a war is going on in these countries and you still step in, was there any hesitation in your mind?
And just to correct, it was Iraq, not Iran.
Okay.
Was there any hesitation? Um, no. There was hesitation coming from my family, from my parents. I'm one of five. I'm the middle child. I have been used to sharing all my life, and I've been used to helping people help themselves all my life. So for me, maybe there was a small element of, will I be safe? The Taliban at the time had fallen in 2002, 4 months previous. Okay. Um, I live and I was born in Belfast, and we had our own issues going on, many, many years ago. But there wasn't so much of, I wasn't scared, like frightened, because then I wouldn't have gone. I have a very, very strong sixth sense, Meenakshi, and I knew that I'm sensible. And I knew that if I stick, because you do training before you go. So you have a week's training. And I'm from Belfast, but I went down 2 hours away to Dublin, and you do a week's training, and it's to give you a little bit of window as to what it's like as a humanitarian. And you ask the different questions. And frankly, I knew that the organisation I was going with was a great organisation. It was at the time it was Go Ireland. I think it's now Go Worldwide. They give first timers the opportunity. So I had no field experience, but they give people the first time you shadow, and then away you go. So I knew they had my back. I knew if the security was not right, that they would protect me and protect the team. I was one of 14. I wasn't the only Irish person either. It was like the United Nations. They were from all over the world. But I knew, not being naive, that I would be safe with that organisation. And I also knew myself, how I work. I'm very process driven and quite strict when it comes to rules. So I knew I wouldn't break curfew. I knew there would be a curfew. And I knew if I really, with my strong sixth sense, if I had felt something, and which I did moving on in my career internationally, I'd remove myself. But initially I wasn't. I was so excited. It wasn't I didn't care, because I knew I was going into somewhere that had been dangerous and still was active. And buildings were blowing up, and you saw the Taliban driving around in some trucks, and that was real. But I was driven to work, I was driven home, and you travelled in convoy, and you had your curfew, and you had your handheld radio. There were things in place that protected you. But I knew myself that I was just too excited, to be honest. It had taken me a long time. My interview, if you don't mind me saying, was actually a chat. So I was, at the time, I worked in England for 2 years, and I went down for a chat. And after half an hour, they offered me a job, and I kind of sat up and I said, "Oh my goodness, they're offering me a job." I didn't realize it was quite relaxed. Um, and I was just so excited. I didn't tell my family or friends until it was on paper, because my initial thought was, this is it. This is it. I am going. I've done my studying, I've done my work, I've got my experience in Newcastle. I worked as a community nutritionist with families, and I knew I could do the job. I just wanted the chance to get out. So I was okay. My family, if you spoke to them, might be a different story. But I knew, hand on heart, I would be clever and smart, not be a martyr, because then I can't do my job, and just listen to my mind and myself. Young, but I knew that I'll be fine. And if I didn't feel fine, I would then ask to leave. And I knew that was an option. You do security training, and it's an option. If you don't feel secure, you can leave. It isn't the ideal, because expats are the most expensive item on the budget as such, because of our insurance and our flights and the accommodation. But if something doesn't feel right, even now in my mid-40s, something doesn't feel right, I don't do it. It was the same then in my mid-20s. So no, I wasn't scared. I was too excited, to be honest. I wanted to get in the plane. I had my rucksack, I had my pictures from my wall, I had my journals to write, I wanted to get out. I wanted to do what I've wanted to do for a long time, and that overshadowed maybe a little niggle as to I'm going into a post-war zone, but still quite fresh.
Yes. And while these countries were war prone, so was there any hesitation and were the people scared of you?
Um, Maybe you need to ask them. I don't think so. They did stare, and I will be honest, I stared back. I mean, I'm pale skin, red hair, although I was scarved. It was a Muslim country and I'm Christian, but out of respect, I scarved immediately. Plus, I didn't want to get my head burnt. It was practical, but initially it was out of respect. And women looked at me with respect, with no language. They knew I was being respectful. So they did stare a lot. But I was myself. I was me. I adhered to the different customs, local customs, particularly as a female. Okay, meaning maybe sitting with the women to eat lunch. As an international, I was seen as an international man, so I could sit with the men. But then I knew when I needed to sit with the women. So I don't think they were scared of me. I did sound different, clearly. I did learn a little bit of the language, Dari. And for that, to be respectful and to be able to introduce myself and, at least make people laugh when I attempted it. But it was my way of attempting to become part of the community, my new family. It was my home for 6 months, and there was lots of love, and I was taken into local houses with my assistants, and I was their sister. I still am their sister. We're still in contact. So I don't think they were scared. They were intrigued. But I wore shalwar kameezes, so my chest was covered, my arms were covered, my legs were covered, and I had a scarf on. So, but I still looked very different. But no, I don't think I scared anyone. But I was mindful of what I talked about, my opinions. I wasn't there for my opinion. I was there to do a job. I wasn't there to take a stand on human rights and female rights. I was there to do a job. I wasn't there as a Christian. I was there in a non-denominational organisation as Una Tohal at the time. I was single, to do a job that I've always wanted to do. So I looked different and I sounded different, but I was that to the Afghans. So we stared to each other as much, but I didn't mind it because I was intrigued with them as I'm sure they were intrigued with me.
So, how many countries have you traveled so far through your work?
Through my work, I believe it was 9. So I started off, well, if I include where I went into and where I went out of, and my rest and recuperation, my rest and relaxation in between. So started off, I left Belfast and I then went to London and I flew into Pakistan. So I was in Islamabad for 3 days to acclimatise, which was a shock because at 3 o'clock in the morning I arrived and it's like 25 degrees. And there's so many people, it's like, it was just, my senses just flew into overdrive. So into Afghanistan. Every 6 weeks you got rest and relaxation, you got R&R. So I had the privilege of going to Uzbekistan for my first, and then I went to Turkmenistan in my second. So I came out of Afghanistan and I went to Ethiopia, and then moved from Ethiopia to Angola, and then Angola to the Middle East. So I started off in Kuwait, and then Iraq twice with 2 different organizations, once bitten, twice shy, and then was based in Jordan for a while, because Iraq to me was too unsafe. So I removed myself. In between there, I went on R&R to Sri Lanka and Uganda. And then I came home for a while. And then from there, I went to West Darfur in South Sudan. And then Niger in Africa. And then from Niger, I went to Democratic Republic of Congo. But before I worked internationally, I was an ISD student, an exchange student, and I worked in the Czech Republic. I worked in Prague. I've seen quite a bit of the world, which has been amazing.
Wonderful. So the countries you have been to have extreme climate conditions. Like it's really hot sometimes. Sometimes the nights are really cold. So how difficult was it to adjust to such extreme climates?
Well, it took a while, to be honest. The extreme for me, the most extreme on my body, would be in Iraq. When I went to Iraq, which was southern Iraq, I went to Nasiriyah, which was very much close to the front line. I went into Iraq a month after Saddam Hussein Hussein had fallen in 2003. He fell in the march, and I was there a month later. And I got a full forehead full of white spots, white heads, and rashes all over under my arms, my legs. My body really didn't know what was going on, because before Iraq, I had been in Angola. And in Angola, it was certain parts of Angola, we had air conditioning, so my body actually thought it was cool. So I was pulled out of Angola to go into Iraq. So lots of rashes, lots of going to bed with wet scarves over my body. In Afghanistan, when I started off, we had no air conditioning. Okay. And it was 50 degrees plus. Now here today in Belfast, in Ireland, it is maybe 21. So double and some. And we had no air conditioning, so the fans, the standalone fans just recirculated warm air. So it was tough. Siestas were taken and drinking copious amounts of water. Now in Afghanistan, the mornings were warm as well. It didn't really start to get cool until about September, if I'm honest. Africa was cold, particularly Ethiopia was cold in the morning. But as soon as the sun came up, it was really, really hot. So when I was doing my survey in Ethiopia, we were in the field for 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning in order to finish at 11 o'clock, because once the sun came up, it was unbearable. So, and then cool in the evening. So my body went through some change. And that's one of the things, my take-home messages from this is how amazing our bodies are, you know, because I left a fairly cold country. When I left London, it might have been double figures. It might have been 12, 13. And that was the first thing that hit me when I arrived into Pakistan, was the heat at 3 o'clock in the morning, never mind during the day. So some countries I had air conditioning, some countries I just had to get on with it, if I'm perfectly honest, and take showers or take bucket showers all the time. But siestas kind of saved me, and knowing when to stop. In Afghanistan, our lunches went from 1 hour to 2 hours when the summer came in. So from June to about June, July, August, we had 2 hours. So we would have eaten and then slept. And it was recommended to sleep. But in Iraq for 2 days, we had 62 degrees centigrade. That was because it was in the country, we'd get the sub-Sahara, would get the winds up, and we'd no electricity that day for one of the days. And it was like water was trickling down my front, down my back. I was drinking from my bottle, and the sweat was coming out at the same time. So as a nutritionist, you had to be mindful of your electrolytes, of your sodium and potassium, so oral rehydration. So just being sensible, always drinking and taking the sleep when recommended, staying out of the sun. I did faint in Afghanistan. And I'll tell you the story quickly. It's quite an embarrassment, but they were more worried about me than I was about myself. I'd been in the houses are made from mud, so they hold the heat during the day. They hold the heat in the sun, and they're cool in the summer and warm in the winter because they hold the heat. And I was surrounded by a group of men, which was quite common, and my translator, who was male as well. And I stood up too quickly, and the next thing I knew, I was in the ground. It was a combination of heat and nerves, because I was in a room full of village leaders. And when you do surveys, you just don't arrive and do it. You have to speak to the village leaders, the religious leaders, and they have to approve. If you go in and cause offence, you're sent home. And that happened in agency. You have to be respectful to the local customs. So I fainted then. So they were all very worried about me. Oh, Miss Una, are you okay? And they were very worried about me. So I rest assured them that I was okay, and I sat in the car with the car running in the shade for the air conditioning, and they carried on without me. They were very worried, very, very worried, because they'd welcome me into their country, and they didn't want their country to make me sick, although I got sick lots of times, but it was the heat. So just being sensible, taking naps and drinking loads and loads of water and staying out of the sun. The height of the sun, I can't be in the height of the sun anyway. But in the countries I was in, it was extreme. And basing my work around the climate. So not only maybe accessibility to villages, security, Ramadan came in over a couple of surveys and different things that I had to take on board, and the team and the morale. And there were 16 of us in the teams, 4 teams of 4. So all of that. But for me, mostly it was my heat. And, you know, the Afghans found it warm too. And they used to say, Mizuna, how are you coping? But I just knew when to rest and, you know, go to bed with no clothes on, with a wet scarf over me, because it was hot. It was very, very hot. But that was one of the challenges that I suppose proved to me how amazing our bodies are. You know, if you came to my country, actually, you would find it freezing.
Yes.
So it was difficult, but I got on with it. It was my job. But over time, I actually got used to it. You know, but when I was in Iraq for the first time, when I adjusted for a month, I went home for a friend's wedding. And when I came back, my body had to readjust again. So the same things across my forehead and the same rashes. But then you just conformed your body. And I find it very amazing to think I'm Irish and I live in not a very hot country, but I managed to cope 45 plus for maybe 5 years. You know, and it's okay. I have memory cells now. I can go to different countries and I know what I need to do. But in the countries I was in, mostly outside of a number in Africa, I was covered. My skin was covered, so I knew I wasn't getting burnt. And I just had to be sensible. So it was tough, but I just got on with it.
In some countries that you worked, like in Niger and other parts, there were no electricity and proper hygiene conditions. So I also saw your shower room, which was very basic. So how did you
Yes.
manage and adjust to all of that?
I
And also, did for once in your mind did it come that I in excitement said yes, and should I leave now because the conditions are tough?
No, I didn't. I only removed myself from a country because of security. The hygiene was limited, yes, and I did what I could. And when I was in Niger, I kept everything off the floor, and I didn't use, for example, for my porridge, I used powdered milk rather than water. I had to be very careful from a personal perspective because I would get very, very sick, dysentery and whatnot. So, but when I was in Afghanistan, you're encouraged to use local water. And there's a syndrome that I've called the welcome syndrome. So for 2 weeks, you are never away from the bathroom. Okay, you have D&V, you have vomiting, and you have diarrhea because your body is just going, what is going on? Because there's things in water all across the world that can make you quite sick. So we cleaned our teeth with the local water and we built up the resistance to that. Because when we spoke previous to this, I lived there. I didn't travel there. So when I lived there, I had to adjust. I had to say, right, I'm here for longer. What do I need to do? It isn't just fly in, fly out. So I cleaned my teeth with local water in Afghanistan. The hygiene was it was difficult. It was different and difficult to see as well, because particularly in lots of African countries, there's a lot of stagnant water that children played in and people drank from, because that's all they had. That's all they had. And that was hard to see because I knew, standing there watching, going, if I drank that, it actually could kill me. And malaria was rife, you know, the mosquitoes around the stagnant water. So malaria rates were very, very high in those particular countries. So, but it never put me off. My shower rims were very basic. But what I discovered is you don't actually need that much water to clean yourself. You know, you have a bucket. You have one bucket to wet yourself. You wash yourself. You have one bucket to rinse. And if you're going to do your hair, you maybe have 3 buckets. So for me, it opened my eyes as to how much water is actually wasted in showers. Now, I'm not saying here now back at home, I try and be mindful of my water use. But it didn't put me off. It was challenging. In lots of countries, you squat when you go to the toilet. So my thighs were pretty damn muscular at the end. So in Afghanistan, in our house was 3 levels. Okay, if you can, it was a big house, and the bottom, the ground floor had 1 toilet, a sit-down toilet, and the rest were squats, latrines. So for 2 weeks, the running joke was you leave downstairs free for the newbies. It takes about 2 weeks for things to adjust internally, with the different food as well as the heat, as well as the water. And then after 2 weeks, you use the upstairs toilet, because you need to be near a sit down if you're going to be in the bathroom for a long period of time. Sorry to be so graphic, but that's the true reality of going somewhere. You know, you hear people, you know, having the bad, the iffy stomachs. You can have that, I suppose, if you're on holiday for 2 weeks and then you come back and you have to adjust. But I couldn't have been sick all the time, then I couldn't have done my job. So some of the sites I saw, I just had to improvise. On occasion, I was lucky just to have water. You mentioned the electricity. I became very creative, really creative. And again, realizing you don't actually need that much. So you get up with the sun and you go to bed when there's no sun. So you had to work around that. In certain countries, particularly in Ethiopia, the resources were limited. I had no photocopier, was limited. I used carbon paper in the field in Ethiopia. I worked in the Afar region. So you make a mistake and you start again. And with electricity, you just work with what you had. The term city power, you may or may not have heard of that, is you know when it's going to be on and you know that's when you do your work, but sometimes it wasn't on. So frustrating. I'm not going to sit here and lie, it wasn't frustrating. And it's one of the things now when I'm home, I do like a gratitude update every Friday. That was in one of them. We flick a switch in Belfast. It's here. We turn a tap. The water's there. It's clean, it's fresh. That isn't across the world. And I'm trying to now and bring that forward as to how lucky we actually are, where I come from and what we do have. So limited, frustrating initially, but then that's where I was going. I didn't sign up to go live in a 5-star hotel in Mazar-e-Sharif, in the Afar region, in different cities and different villages for my work. I knew what I was getting myself in for. So I knew that was going to be part of it. So it's something that you have to take on board. And, you know, if anybody listening to this ever thinks about humanitarian work as a career, you have to be mindful that there will be limitations. But from those limitations are positives. You know, we talked a lot as teams. We gelled very quickly. So that's the one common thing. And you get to know when to give a hug, when not to give a hug. And yes, it's difficult when there's no electricity. But in Afghanistan, when we had a couple of electricity light outs, the stars fell from the sky because it has the most beautiful, what's it called, galaxy or Milky Way. So some of the skies I've seen across the globe are priceless, and that's from no electricity. Limiting in the villages and where I was at, because not to be heavy and to be serious, but I was measuring malnutrition in children under 5. So when you're in maybe a hut in Africa or a mud house in Afghanistan and they've no running water, the water is from a well, they've limited of no electricity, you know, all of that has an impact on health, you know. So I don't think they would see my aspect of the lovely sky, but that's my Western eyes looking at it, you know, with respect to me and respect to them. So tricky and difficult, and you have to be mindful of the recommendations you're making for families, because it isn't a given that they have access to healthcare as well as electricity. So I conformed and I worked around it, but I'm not going to sit here and lie that it wasn't frustrating. And I slept really well because I was tired, and then you get up with the sun and then you would see a different skyline, you know. So I think things do change, but the water was hard to see with the children. And then when I was promoting health promotion, being mindful of hygiene and good hygiene, you know, and forgetting my education from the West and from a country that's developed and has these amenities at the touch of a button, to being boiling water, leaving water out in the sun. But also the water that was taken from wells was very limited. So you became mindful of, okay, this is what these individuals from those countries are working with. How do I tailor my training and my promotion around those people? Not my education from the West. It's what I'm seeing now. So I had to adapt and become very creative and take my theory and throw it in the air sometimes and become very practical. As I said at the start, what I saw in a book when I was 17 in school is not what it was like in the field. No way. But what I hope is from my, as you say, my new adventure at the start is unique new adventure, is to take people on that journey and just have maybe a little bit of a window as to what it was like. Because if I'd have had that before I went, it isn't the same. It'll never be the same. You could tell me to come to India and it's wonderful but until I actually go there, I won't know it. So that's my thinking. So I'm trying to bring that learning forward. So frustration, but then I have skills now I never would have had if I hadn't have worked away and lived away. And things don't annoy me now. At the moment, the COVID and being and staying, as I say, rather than maybe lockdown or lock-in, I've been used to that before internationally. So I can't move. Well, that's okay. But look what we have. I have a home, I have heat, I have electricity, I have water, I have access to a garden. I can still go to the doctors if I need to. So there's things, I look at things differently now that I wouldn't have if I hadn't have seen the other parts of the world that don't have that. But one thing I do want to say is, even all of that on board, the generosity and the love and the welcome and the joy, even though people were living under the poverty line, what I'm used to, and not having those amenities, was amazing. Such love and such generosity. When some families I saw had nothing. I was offered lunch in the field and people had nothing and they still wanted to give me something. So they always had something from nothing, just to show their appreciation for the work that I was doing with the organisation I was there with.
That was so beautiful. So you also got to attend some of the weddings in these areas. You were invited into saloons. You got to have meals with them. So tell me how beautiful that feeling was.
It really warmed my heart because I was being welcomed into a family that wasn't mine, but it felt like family. So I had a number of ladies' lunches in Afghanistan with my Afghan sister Zora, and we're still friends. She lives now in America with her family. And I remember going in and her mother took my head. I would have had my scarf around my neck coming into her compound, and her mother took it off. And I was welcomed into her home, and I was her sister. I was her sister. And that was it. Her mother fed me at one time because they eat with their hands. And I just couldn't grasp it. And I have a vivid memory of her mother feeding me, and I ate for 2 hours. It was just humbling, really, really humbling. And on occasion, I used to sit back and just think how amazing this is. I was a stranger, but they treated me like one of their own, So, and I went to a number of weddings. I went to a wedding in Iraq. I was invited into around Iraq. They have 3 days, the women, the men, 1 day women, 1 day men, and then together the third day. And I was invited in. It was one of the doctors on the team, one of his family members getting married. And I find it hard to put into words. I was taken aback because they would, when they're celebrating. So I arrived and I'm hearing and it's like, oh my goodness, they were celebrating me being there, but I was celebrating the fact that I was welcomed into a room surrounded by women. And I actually couldn't communicate with him because my translator at the time was male, so he couldn't come in. So hands gestures and laughing and just improvising. So it was such a joy and a privilege to be welcomed. So yes, I looked different. I sounded different. I didn't have the language. I had a different religion. I had a different skin color. I came from a totally different part of the world, 2 or 3 flights away. But yet I was one of them. I was one of them. So I never felt insecure. I never felt out of place. I always knew I'm Irish. I'm very proud to be Irish. I always knew I was there for a moment in time. But they became my family, my second family, So it was just an absolute honour. So on occasion I would get quite emotional because I would be lost in conversation because I had a little bit of diary, and of course I had Zora who spoke English. But then sometimes I said, no, I don't want to translate it. I just want to absorb the atmosphere. And on a couple of when the survey finished, we went to Zora's house, and it was a lot of the female surveyors. And I got to see them without their headscarves. So they're beautiful, beautiful dark hair compared to my red head. Their skin, their makeup, their gorgeous clothes, their jewellery. And we just danced. I learned how to dance, as an Afghan. And it was just, I found photographs recently because I kept journals when I worked internationally as a way to, I suppose, process what I saw initially and to keep record, because I thought this is such an honour and I really don't want to forget this. And I found some pictures of myself and the ladies dancing, which I will never share because they're not scarved and they're my personal photographs. I'm very mindful of that and respectful of that. But you can just see the joy in our faces. And they were seeing a different side of me because in the survey we're working and it's hot and we've work to do. And in Afghanistan at that time, particularly the burqas then were off. Traditionally women would have worn burqas. So I was seeing them as them and they were seeing me as me, and they were all looking fabulous and I was in my work gear, my own shalwar. But it was just, I never felt out of place. And Zora's mother called me her daughter, and that's such an honour, considering 6 months prior I'd never met Zora nor her mother. And in Afghanistan they sit on the floor to eat, so I joke about my shalwar kameez. The trousers had elasticated trousers, so I was able to eat for 2 hours because it's the best food. Everything is there, and you eat and you eat and you eat, and hospitality with a capital H, it's phenomenal. As I say, they were just happy for me to be there. So it felt really, really good. It felt very heartwarming and such a privilege and honour to be welcomed into their home where you wouldn't get that ordinarily. You wouldn't be invited to, if you visited, let's say if the country was open and you could fly in, you wouldn't get that. So it was excellent. I say it with a huge smile on my face, and you can tell by my voice it's brilliant. And when I think about those experiences, I just think, wow, thank you to them. So wonderful every time.
So there was a time when you had a chance to meet Jolie, but you missed it by 1 day.
Yes.
So what happened?
Okay. Yes, I had worked in a number of Muslim countries and had never, and Ramadan was on throughout the work, and I'd never attempted Ramadan. Now I'm a Christian, so I have no need to attempt, but I wanted to have a different layer of empathy because the people still worked, and particularly in South Sudan, it is hot and they still worked in the field. So I thought I'll try. So I spoke to my boss and she said, as long as it doesn't affect your work, of course. So myself and my colleague, who I'm still in contact with, Canadian lady, we tried. But on the 5th day, I collapsed. So what I didn't know, because I'm not a Muslim, is you don't eat from sunrise to sunset during Ramadan. But you get up in the middle of the night and eat often. But I didn't know that. How would I know that? No one told me. So the days are really hard, really, really hard. And I wasn't hydrating myself during the night. But it was really, really, I have to say, it was absolutely amazing the 5 days because my body changed. And they used to say to me, Miss Una, you look more beautiful. And I used to I looked at myself and my skin was different and you smelt things differently. It was a different perspective. So I then was medically evacuated I was in West Darfur. I was in Janina. So I flew into Khartoum Then you fly, you take 2 flights to the farthest you can go. I believe it's on the border of Chad. I hope my geography is right. And my boss didn't take any risks, basically. We talked about water before. The water there had to be boiled and filtered. We had to push at the time, the people I was with, for them to supply water, bottled water, because they weren't. So, long story short, I was medically evacuated out on the plane to Khartoum, to a clinic. And the next day, Angelina Jolie arrived to where I was. And I've told the story before, and friends of mine say, she missed you by a day. You didn't miss her. Now, no, she's a UN ambassador. I missed her. Well, there's a photograph I have of her with my boss, Amy, an American lady, a wonderful, wonderful lady. And I often think, what if? But I wasn't meant to meet her. If I was meant to meet her, I would have met her. So I stayed in Khartoum for 2 weeks. I stayed in the clinic for a number of days. I was severely dehydrated. My body's way was saying, you have to stop. So subsequently, my colleague who was doing it with me went back on eating normally. I laugh about it now because I told my colleagues when I came back, and they said, what? You didn't eat during the night? You're supposed to get up during the night and eat. Well, I didn't know that. I'm not a Muslim. So, but there was a lot of respect for me attempting. Little bit of I wish I'd managed the whole time, but your health is your wealth, and I've been sick a number of times, including malaria, and I can't do my job. I was there to do my job. I wasn't there to make a point. I wasn't there to be, look at me, I'm wonderful doing this. It was my job. It was my career. So if I can't do my job, what's the point of me being there? So yes, I missed her by a day. Maybe I'll meet her one day. We're the same age, believe it or not. But I was accompanied by my friend Ayubo, as a Sudanese man, and I was taken to a clinic, and I was in a drip for a number of days. And I rested for 2 weeks, and then I went back in. So it is what it is, I suppose. But it's would have been wonderful to have met her, but it didn't take away from what I was doing. But it just, who knows? I may try Ramadan again. But it was just I just wanted to have a different understanding. Really a different understanding, because I was so welcomed. And they very much respected my religion. Because when I worked in Niger, I worked with Christians and Muslims. And we both respected each other. We worked side by side as one should. When I worked in Iraq, when I went to Baghdad, I was based in Baghdad for a while. There were Christians and Muslims together. I worked with some Christians, I worked with some Muslims. So equality and equity is very much, me. So there's no problem, but maybe I'll try Ramadan again. But yes, that's my story, that I missed the superstar Angelina Jolie by one day, or she missed me.
Well, at least you were safe because you were dehydrated, like a lot dehydrated.
Absolutely. That all of that went by the wayside. My boss was like, that's it. She got me in a plane. She said, I'm not taking any chances, because Janina, when we talked about amenities, we talked about water and electricity. The roads were sand. Okay. We got our water to our compound. We called it donkey water. The water was taken from a well, and they were like tire tanks on the back of a donkey taken to our tank, and that's what we used to get washed. So that was our access as an international. And then we finally got water to drink. So the hospitals, limited medication. Hygiene, none. So the answer was, and I didn't want to go. I really didn't want. I said, I'm fine. I'm resilient. I'm fine. I'm headstrong. I'm determined. I won't be doing my job. And my boss said, no, you're leaving. And I was severely malnourished. So I was very lucky that I had such a fabulous boss. And that's when we talked at the very beginning about feeling anxious and scared. You know, maybe there was an element of my boss being frightened that it would get worse, and then I'm stuck. And in these countries, I have to also say, Meenakshi, is that you're limited to flights out. There are flights out now in Afghanistan every day. I did travel to Kabul a number of times, but they're limited. So the flights out of Janina and West are for, well, maybe once a day, once every 2 days from memory. So if I hadn't have gone on a particular flight at a particular time, I'm stuck. It's a huge risk, a huge, huge risk. So yes, so that's, I mean, of course, the take home is I was okay. So I got myself well again, and I went back in. And everybody was very concerned, and we joked about it. And as I said, when I would have gone to breaking the fast with my colleagues. And that was an experience I forgot to mention. I was going into local Sudanese homes with my colleagues. The men were all dressed in their destaches and pure, pure white. And the food was on the ground. And I'd never seen food eaten so quickly in my entire life. It was just gone. And we listened to Bob Marley and we told stories, and, it was amazing. But they laughed at me. They were like, wow. So I learned everything. I learned every day. I explored Ramadan. I explored fasting. And now I know you get up in the middle of the night and you eat. You don't just get up and have one bowl of, you don't just get up from your dinner and have your porridge before the sun comes up and you're okay. So, yes.
That's beautiful. You tried Ramadan.
Yes. As
Wonderful experience. Yes.
Yeah. It was hard. I've never seen, I talk about this when I worked with Sudanese, and they're African, they call themselves black. I hope I'm not offending anybody with this. And their skin was pale because they weren't eating. And the food drops were coming in with World Food Programme. They couldn't get the roads were sand. So the food was coming in from the air really early in the morning, and they were going out, lifting it, physical work, lifting it and bringing back to our stores, and then working in the heat, not drinking and not eating. And that's why I wanted to have a little bit of a window as to what it was like, knowing it was for a certain period. I suppose to compare, it's little bit. I'm a Catholic, I'm a Roman Catholic. A little bit about like Lent, where on the lead up to Easter, or my religious event, where you don't. Some people fast, some people eat fish every Friday, but you go off something, or you go on something. But Ramadan is going off everything that you consume and drink, so it's very different. But they were respectful of me attempting, but they were glad I was okay, obviously, and I was glad I was okay too.
I'm glad too.
Yeah,
We're all glad.
It wasn't.
Okay, please share with us at least any one adventure, which is something that you remember a lot, something very close to your heart, or any adventure that you remember.
I suppose the first time in the field, the very, very first time, because I found it very emotional, because for the want of trying to get away for so long. And I have a photograph, and I'm wearing the headscarf is my mother's. I look about 60, which I'm not, but I have a measuring tape around my neck, and I have both Zora and my other assistant Ramesh on either side, and I am grinning like a Cheshire cat, because that was it. That was the moment when I took my theory into practice. I was in a mud house, scarved, measuring a child to see if he or she was malnourished, dressed appropriately, haven't been in the country for maybe a number of weeks, yes. And that was it. This was me. I was going live. I was putting all my energy, all my passion, all my training, all my studies into practice, and that was it. And it was like, yes, this is the start. And then from that, you know, I did my time in Afghanistan, and before I left Afghanistan, I was going through my journals. I was offered Sudan, but then it changed to Ethiopia. You know, so as soon as I did one piece of work in a one mission, one posting in a country, my world opened. But until I got that opening, I was getting nothing. So I think for me, and I have left a piece of my heart in Afghanistan. I definitely have, because they welcomed me in and they allowed me to be there, not as an Afghan, as an Irish lady, as part of an organisation. And that's where I started. That's where I started. So I have a very, very fond memory. So I think that to me is pinnacle. I have a number of stories, you know, that were very surreal. One in particular, just to add, is the time in Baghdad. I was very sick and I went to the green zone, and I had to give a urine sample to the man I was seeing, the doctor, and I was in one of Saddam Hussein's golden bathrooms, golden taps.
Wow.
And yeah, even when I said now, it's like, that happened. You know, I shouldn't have been in the green zone. And the doctor said, how did you get in here? At the time, the security officer for the organization I was with was a French Foreign Legion, had been, and he was pushing me to get in. And he said, how did you get past security? But you're here now, so I'll see you. I had sciatica when I was in Iraq, which was tough. And then as it turned out, something else transpired from that visit, which I didn't know I had. So it was good. But that's another kind of surreal moment where I'm sitting on a golden toilet. This is kind of wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And
So
again,
true.
they said, how did you? And it was Christmas time. It was the one time I missed Christmas from home. The one time. And that time we had Christmas with an organization on Christmas Eve. We celebrate on Christmas Day here at home, Christmas Eve. So Christmas Day I was in my shorts looking at the most beautiful blue sky. And that was different. But yeah, so there's lots of different things that I'm remembering, but I think the most pinnacle is the day I went to the field. I actually went to the field as an international nutritionist, as Una Tohal at the time, my maiden name. This is where things have just took off from there, you know, and it was kudos to the organization because they give first timers a chance. Because there's lots of people, you know, want to work internationally, you know, and if I can inspire people just to keep at it and stay at it, because I had to persist. I applied everywhere, everywhere. And back in the day where you would have had an application form with your picture on it, you can't do it now, you know. And I had the qualifications, I had the passion, and I got letters back saying it's all very well being a technical expert, but you have no field experience. But I'm a very determined girl, and my dad tells a familiar story. When I was younger, I was asthmatic, and I weaned myself off my medication. I didn't want to be dependent on my inhalers. So I was 9 or 10, and I did that. So I was determined to go. So my one thing is keep at it, keep trying, you know, and Gold gave me that opportunity. Half the team were newbies. Half the team were you know, so when people were coming in, the big eyes and the, oh my, you know, but I'd been there. You're there a couple of weeks, you're there a couple of days, and I loved it. I knew the door opened in the plane, the heat, the different language, the dark beards of the men, you know, I mean, I was in an airport and there were guns there and there was army, different languages and the smells and the sugary tea and the cigarettes, and it was just like, I remember leaving the airport, and at the bottom of the airport road, there was a little donkey and a little boy with his donkey. It's, you know, there were donkeys and horses and carts back then, and nothing was wasted. There was no, you know, everything was recycled. He was staring at me, I was staring at him, and it was like I'm back in time. 2 days, 3 days, I loved it. I loved it. But that photograph, and I have it, and it's like that for me would be the pinnacle. I've done it. I've got there. I've persevered. I've tried. I lived in England for 2 years to get experience, and that helped me. So I had to become very creative. I said, I want to go. What can I do? And I stuck at it. I didn't give up. I could have given up, but it's not my character to give up. So that photograph, I look at it and I smile. I remember the smells, I remember the day, I remember the moment, and someone took a picture of me. And I have that now forever. So that would be. But I could talk all day. There's lots of different things, but that's the one. This is my career. I've got there. This is all me, and I'm going to make this work, and it's going to be fabulous.
So, ever are you thinking of publishing these journals so that you can enrich the lives of other people through your stories?
Well, I don't know. Just for you, I don't know if you. This is my Afghan journal. Okay, so I've made little notes. It's a physical journal. It's physical words because people often query. I wrote in this. I mean, at the very, very start. But I've almost finished Afghanistan, so I maybe have 7 or 8 to go. It's a long process. I have to be honest, Meenakshi, because I'm working full time. I've started my own business as Unique New Adventure. I'm also a director of Join Her, a new network from last year, and we're beginning to take off with different things that we're doing. And I'm a mother of 2 young boys. So my plate is full, but I'm absolutely loving it. So I have an idea in my head. I mean, I went in 2002, and I think it'd be wonderful to have it complete by 2022, so 20 years. Now, I know the countries have changed. I know things have changed, but cultures haven't changed and customs haven't changed. Weather hasn't changed, food hasn't changed, security has changed, but it's very much, it's my experiences and it's my stories and it's my interpretation of what it was like, my personal photographs. So it is a work in progress. I will let you know, and we're friends now, so we'll keep in contact. I'm starting to release individual stories. I released something from Niger about an incident when I went for a run and wild dogs, and my savior coming. I mean, it was, when I think about it now, it makes me shiver, and I've done, I've written up the piece about seeing the first malnourished child. The first one is the hardest. So I'm starting to try and increase my presence. I don't want to give too much away, but it's day to day. At the moment, that's what it's looking like. So I'm typing it up as it is. I've spoken to some people, and whether it's 1 book or 6 books, or it's different themes, or it's different events, I don't know. But I want to share it. The benefit in meeting different people and being exposed to different religions and customs and cultures, I would highly recommend anybody. I went away and I came back, and I'm not the Una I was when I left. It didn't kill me. It made me stronger. It made me more resilient. It made me more appreciative of what I have here. And I want to bring that forward. It was only last year I went up to my attic and I have lots of artifacts from around the world, different materials, gleams and carpets and female dress, as I bought for educational purposes. I want to pass it on. I want that to be my legacy for my children. I'm a Concern worldwide ambassador, to keep myself engaged with humanitarian issues and what has happened at the moment. Because I have young children, I'm not in the field. I do want to go back to the field, but I will not do emergency like before. Niger was development. It was secure. It was community mobilization. It was moving the community to help themselves. The others were emergency. As a mother now, I can't go and hold a sick, dying child as I did before. Give me 2-3 years, I would like to go back to the field in my capacity, maybe in my new business, or maybe in work as a humanitarian again, because it is something that will never leave me, never leave me. And I would like people, I hope they find it interesting. Anybody I've spoken to has said, I can't wait to read your stories. They are stories, but it's my life, and it's the reality of what it's like as a humanitarian, but it's positive. Things happen day to day. Children still go to school. The markets are still there. Yes, with the insecurities. I mean, I went to the 3rd biggest blue mosque in the world on New Year's Day in Afghanistan. They hadn't celebrated New Year for years before because of the Taliban, and I was there. You know, sacred mosques, a mosque in Uzbekistan, beautiful blue mosques. You know, able to things that I only ever probably dreamt of, countries I had to physically look on a map to find. So I want to impart this that you can travel, you can change your mind and your thinking, and variety and diversity. You know, I'm bringing it home now to the work that I do. It's an education, and now as respect that education, I'm passing that on. You know, because I think if you stay where you are and don't experience different things, I mean, the differences I've talked about, but even just the different ways of thinking, different ways of working, different mindsets, different work ethics, that all makes you a different person for the good. And that's why, you know, the book is a legacy to my two children. They know what I've done. My eldest, who's 8, describes me as I used to help people. He thought I was a nurse or a doctor. And I talked to him about what I used to do. We talk about it. Don't waste water. Don't waste food. You know, we're lucky we have electricity. We do gratitude every night. You know, he needs to know how privileged we are. And that's part of it. And it's not, look at me, I'm wonderful. It's not like that. This was my job and I want to talk about it and I want to pass on my learning. If anybody wants to do it, you can do it. And it's eye-opening. And it's a real privilege and honor to be able to see parts of the world, because the world is a small place. So it is coming. It's just not as quick as I thought, but it's definitely coming. The train has left the station and it's not going back.
And we're looking forward to it.
Good.
Now you're working on Join Her Network and Unique New Adventures Limited. So
Yes.
please throw some light on it. What is it about and what are you doing in it?
Well, with my own unique new adventure, it's around an international education from across the globe to the eyes of a humanitarian. So it's including public speaking and including podcasts and my stories, education, exhibitions, and workshops. I have done a number of workshops last year around Afghan culture and Iraq culture. Now, I'm mindful I'm not Afghan and I'm not Iraqi, but it's through the eyes of a humanitarian, so I speak about my experiences. So it's very practical. I have my rug and we sit on the ground and we talk through. We find the country initially, and then we talk to the country, and then we bring it to life. And it's open. So it's my work is very practical, and that's how I see it going forward. It is in development, but I wanted to go live because I didn't want to lose, if I'm honest, lose my name. It's an acronym to my name, Una. So unique new adventure. And I want to bring you on a unique new adventure through my eyes as a humanitarian. Just to start the conversation about different things. What females wear across the globe. What type of food we eat. How we act. How our way we think can change things. So it's bringing everything that I have learnt from the 5 years to life as a Western. So currently it's been a number of workshops, practical workshops. So I'm having to be creative now in this stay-in period. And a lot of it is focusing on my journals and my stories. So I'm slowly beginning to release work, and that's part of the work. So it's an international education. It's a re-education. That would be from around the world through the eyes of a humanitarian. So a lot of the work that I've been doing, an exhibition of my artifacts, of my pictures, of my paintings. Hold it, feel it, smell it, talk about it. You know, I have a burqa from Afghanistan, traditionally worn at that time. It's handmade. Try it on. Don't try it on. How do you feel? African dress. I have an abaya from Iraq. It's black. Try it on. Let's talk about it. Let's look at the print. Those types of things that I think it's an honor to have. Different metal works, different copper works from Afghanistan and Iraq. Traditional, you know, the traditional roles of men and women. So a lot of it, my work so far has been with children. Okay, so children like interactive. So that's why I sit on the floor and let's have a chat. Ask me the awkward questions. How did I get there? what it was like, how hot it gets, how cold it gets, because some people don't look beyond where they live or where they holiday. What I want to do is widen that net and look at other countries you may never visit, but what is the harm in learning something different? Because now within Belfast, the canvas of Belfast looks very different. Okay, there's lots of different individuals from around the world in my city, coming with different skills and abilities and ways of thinking. So if you could learn a little bit about that culture or that religion, well, why not? Is my answer, because it's for the betterment of yourself. It's very much let me help create global citizens for the next generation. But I want to focus on the educational part with children. And that then moves me on to join her as well. It's from International Humanitarian, the global issues and then the local issues. So humanity issues, homelessness, food and fuel poverty, period poverty, issues that people may not necessarily feel comfortable talking about, but are big, big issues. So with Join Her, I'm one of 7. We're all from around the world, now based in Belfast. And we came together last year to reignite passions through stories, pass on self-belief for individuals. It's reignited me. I'm a walking example of Join Her. It's very much you belong rather than fitting in. So you want women to come as you are. Come as you are. What you do, how you feel, be yourself and be courageous, be vulnerable, and let us assist you to maybe get you where you want to go. I want to be a writer, a published writer. I want to start my own business. I've done them both because it's given me the confidence and belief that I can do it. So we're looking at different areas that are important. We found a niche to do things a little bit more creatively, with the values of equality and inclusion, and what we say is variety and diversity. So diversity, sometimes people can think of just, I suppose, skin color or hair color, whereas that isn't the case. Diversity goes a lot deeper than that. So, people on the network who are from all over the world, so we have variety in our diversity. We launched officially there in March of this year in the Merchant Hotel in Belfast. And it was, 100 women from all over, different shapes, sizes, colours, backgrounds. Everybody was welcome. And it's variety and diversity. You can do what you want, and we're there to support you. However you feel you need to be supported. So that's Join Her. And it's given me, as I said, the confidence now and the belief for me to officially start my own business.
That is a very beautiful venture and very unique as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a strong message. Okay, so a message for our audience.
If you want to do something, you will find a way to do it and do it. Next one is say yes and then think about it. You'll work it out. I said yes to that talk last March, and now look, I'm two directors and 2 different things. And look at what you have rather than looking for what you don't have. There's so much, so much. And I believe that's why I upload gratitude articles about let's look at what you have rather than always looking for things you want to get, forgetting what you actually have beside you, because we don't need that much. So.
And also to live the cultures, not just go sightseeing while you're traveling.
Of course, yes. Traveling and living are 2 different things in my eyes. But when you travel, you're still exposed to things that you wouldn't have been to if you hadn't have traveled. So yes, get on a plane and explore the world. Absolutely. If you can live somewhere, that's brilliant. But just even traveling to expose yourself to all things different, you will improve and you'll become a global citizen. And then you can, when people talk about different things and different issues, you have a different slant. You have something to add to conversation rather than just always being a listener. I suppose with traveling is my very final take home is be respectful to where you're at. Respect everything where you go. Because there's a saying when in Rome, you've been allowed to visit or live in that country. So when you're in that country, I feel, is do what is respectful for the different customs and cultures and whatnot you're exposed to.
Yes. And how can our audience connect with you? And if they want to join the Join Her network, how can they contact you?
Well, they can contact me directly. I am on Join Her Network on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter, Lappin Una, Lappinuna. We have a website.
Well, so thank you so much, Una, for being on this show. And I'm sure the audience will learn a lot. We cannot cover everything from Una's life and adventures, but yes, we are waiting for the journal. We're definitely looking
Yes.
forward to it.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So, this was Una's story so far of staying strong and being determined to follow her heart no matter the challenges faced. And I'm always excited to listen to her vast cultural knowledge, and I hope that you loved listening to these amazing exploring experiences of hers as well. Thank you so much for giving your precious time to this podcast. If this episode was inspiring and insightful, please do drop a comment on my Instagram and YouTube at the rate MyBohoVoyage. Please do subscribe and give a 5-star rating and hopefully write a review for Inspiring Explorers. Also, please don't forget to connect with me on Instagram and YouTube. Drop me a hi or send me a comment so that I know we are in this journey together. This is Meenakshi Srivastava, your host for Inspiring Explorers, saying goodbye. See you next week with an amazing, inspiring interview. Till then, take care.